Let's talk now to the former head of the referees. That is Keith Hackett. Good afternoon, Keith.
Good evening. Good afternoon, rather. Delighted to be on your show. It seems a long day.
Yeah, I'm sure it is. Well, people want to talk to you, I guess, today. So this statement that Forest issued saying that they had flagged up that one of the officials, the VAR official, had sympathies with Luton Town. Had that been flagged up to you, would you have made a change to the officials just in case or not?
Well, I'm not being clever here, but I had a system in place that seems to have been kicked into the long grass. Before the start of every season, the referees had, and the match officials, or all of them, the assistants as well, had to declare on a form which club they supported and if they had any other allegiances to the clubs in their region or area. We would then, particularly around relegation and promotion situations, we'd look very carefully about who we would appoint to games. That was every weekend. We would watch carefully. In this case, I have to tell you, I'm not being clever, I would not have appointed Stuart to Attwell to this particular game because of his exposure. If he is a declared fan of Luton, for that reason. Let me give you an example. In 2006, the FA appointed Mike Dean to the FA Cup final between Liverpool and West Ham. Mike lived in the Wirral. He was a Tranmere Rovers fan. But deliberations at that time resulted in Mike being taken off that final for a duty of care as an employer towards their employee. So we were very careful about this. And it seems under the regime of Mike Riley, and although he's only early into the job with Howard, that they seem to have ignored those sort of principles and are no longer using them as a guideline.
Sorry, Andy, what was you going to say?
Well, I was just going to ask Keith about the thing that I said about going against Taylor and Oliver, senior referees, that if it had been the other way round, if they'd been the VARs, what would the result have been? And you imagine it would have been different.
We do sense that whether it's conscious, it's probably unconscious. I'm sure that's what Howard Webb would say, but there is a hierarchy and you don't soar off Tails or Ollie, do you? You don't. If they're the senior refs, you've got to have a pretty good reason to get them to go to the screen. Whereas, as Andy says, if it was the other way round, they wouldn't think twice.
You can see clearly that Taylor signals to his shoulder. He thinks it's come off Ashley Young's shoulder. He makes the sign of the ball. He thinks that the ball's been won by Ashley Young. He clearly made a mistake. I can't see how Attwell didn't see that.
Well, I mean, that particular point is one that I also agree with. I do think there is a problem with the VAR role with senior referees. We've seen it with Michael Oliver and we've seen it with Anthony Taylor, where there's a reluctance for VAR to come in. So there is a problem. And this will only be answered when the PGMOL sit down and appoint a specialist panel of VAR operators. That's all they do. They sit there, they do the job. And even if they're not even named as far as the referee's concerned, they should do the job. Now, ultimately, at the end of the day, Attwell is carrying the can for a major error by Anthony Taylor. I mean, it's a clear penalty kick. The one from behind, he's taken him out of the game. How Anthony Taylor, and a very experienced referee, can signal that the ball's being played. Okay, that doesn't stop then the VAR coming in and saying, you got that wrong, mate. Come and have a look at the screen. Why don't they look at the screen? Even on that handball situation, we know that the handball law is a complete mess. You can put 50 or 100 referees in a room and you wouldn't get agreement on some of these decisions. But in order to get consistency, get a specialist panel and get the referees into a room with hundreds of video clips and play them and say, right, we're all going to agree this is handball or we're all going to disagree it's not handball. And then get some form of consistency. It's training, it's education. It's accountability.
Would you like to see VAR completely out the hands of the referees? So maybe these personal relationships, this hierarchy doesn't come into it. So you don't necessarily have the same people on VAR that are refereeing the games. These are just VAR operatives who completely understand the laws, know what they're doing, but they're not necessarily the same people that go out and referee on weekends.
Yes, I do. I think, in fairness, Webb is restricted from that because the FIFA want, if you like, top referees. For me, I have no problem with that. We had assessors assessing referees, and then I went to the Premier League and said, look, I want match delegates. And we finished up with former players, former managers, liaising and watching referees and marking them. And I think that level of independence, something's got to happen. Week in, week out, the game is losing some of its, if you like, glitter, because we're all talking about referee decisions and VAR. And of course, the way VAR is operated in the stadium is really bad. We don't see VAR being communicated successfully inside the stadiums. Things have got to change. They can't continue in the way that they are doing.
If you were, funny Keith, if you were still in Al Webb's position and a Premier League club issued a statement similar to the one that Forest did yesterday, and also, of course, followed it up with Mark Clattenburg, who's working for the club, writing his piece in the Mail today, sort of doubling down on that, what would be your reaction? What would you expect from Al Webb? Would you feel like you needed to react? And how would you be feeling about it? Would you? I mean, because they're obviously doing it thinking, well, OK, we won't get sawn off for the rest of the season. Maybe this will have an impact. But there's no... I mean, I don't think referees referee like that. Whatever's being thrown at Stuart Attwell, I trust his integrity completely. Yes. All referees, I feel the same way about. So that's not the point. It's just, how would you react?
I think you're absolutely right in terms of integrity issues. This is about competence and poor decision making. My view, and what I used to do, is when somebody screamed, I went to see them face to face. It's amazing how they changed their view. Because I think that it's no good dealing with emails and telephone calls. Face-to-face meetings would resolve some of these issues or enlighten each other to the case. I can remember going to see Sam Allardyce when he was at Bolton, and I was at the Chorley ground when Sam had gone out fairly publicly about an offside decision. I thought he was wrong. However, when I got to Chorley, Sam pulled out a laptop using a product called Prozone, an analysis system, proved to me that the decision was wrong. My reaction was to go back to the Premier League, ask for £100,000, and I'd install the same system with the referees. So I think this is, look, learning from each other. Communication has to be at the forefront, not throwing, if you like, snowballs at each other on a Saturday night or a Sunday morning or afternoon when the game's taking place. Yeah. Discussion, education, and a sympathetic view. But please, take more care about the appointments, because this was a poor appointment if Attwell is a Luton fan.
Good to talk to you, Keith. Appreciate your time and your expertise.
Pleasure.
Thank you. Keith Hackett there, former head of the referees.
You make it sound like he's Harry the Hatter.
Yeah, I mean, he does. Yeah, he doesn't walk around giving out sweets to the kids and waving. He doesn't work as a mascot. That is very true. But, excuse me, he does have some... Apparently, goes back to 2010. Right, okay. I read somewhere that he'd been outed as a Luton fan. But I don't think for a moment that played into that. What will be interesting is when we get the next thrilling instalment of... match officials mic'd up with Howard Webb and Michael Owen. We will hear the audio, I would imagine, from Anthony Taylor. And I'm guessing while he does the little mime of he got the ball, he'll be saying, he got the ball, he got the ball. So there'll be no doubt in Stockley Park as to what he meant and what he thought.
I like your suggestion for the theme tune of that programme, the whole Ronnie Corbett.
They should be, the music from Sorry. That should be the theme tune.
That's what it should be.
For match officials mic'd up, really. Anyway. We said, Forest fans, interesting to hear from you. Chris, the Forest fan, said, my wife said to me yesterday, he's Ashley Young's mum on the VAR. It's a very good line, Chris.
Good point.
I'm disgusted by the Forest statement, to be honest, yet it was poor officiating. However, you simply cannot come out and insinuate cheating. I'm a Wolves fan and we've had some shockers from VAR, but the club haven't made a petulant statement about the officials. 2 of them would have been soft pens, so I don't see why there's so much fuss. Grow up and get over it, says Jack, the Wolves fan.
Well,
Cornwall.
Wolves have had a lot of terrible decisions.
They have.
This year.
But I can understand in the moment, but the official website to do that.
No, you can't do that. It's ludicrous.
On AM, on DAB, via the talkSPORT app and on your smart speaker. talkSPORT.